Okay, good morning, everyone. You can hear the banter still going on from last night. Flames versus Oilers. So, but we'll get through that. Want to welcome everybody here this morning. Thank you. Thanks for those that are attending. I think, yeah, they can hear me, but maybe you guys can't in the room. So this is a new format. We are really meeting for the first time. We had an engagement session earlier in last year, and that session was done online. It was kind of the first time that we got together, and we were working through well, it was kind of an experiment, really, but we do want to have these engagement sessions that are important to us, and we appreciate your input and attending. So, and the whole reason for these sessions is really to get your input, not more to get your input than to tell you what we're doing, although we will give you a bit of a brief overrun on what we're doing. And so with that, I'd like to introduce the table. And by the way, it's the first time that we've actually met in person. So to my right is Erica Ringsey, who's on residential council. Bill Briggs is also on residential council and also a member of the board, of the large board. And Russ Morrow, who is our CEO at RECA. So welcome, you guys. A couple things to keep in mind is that RECA is here for the protection of the public. And so our mandate is downloaded from the government, not uploaded from the industry, although we are self-regulated and we want to maintain self-regulation. That's kind of a key point. Right now, we have a period where we're going through the minister will be actually, he approves everything that we do until I think the date is December 1st of 2023.
This year, 2022.
Sorry, 2022. Okay, yeah. So we are really regulated by the minister. So the question about who regulates the regulator, it's actually the minister, right now for the time being. And we hope that we will continue self-regulation in the future. So. We'll start by just giving you a bit of a brief overview. What we worked on this year was education divestment. Divestment date is June 1st. It's coming up pretty quick. That's been mandated by the government that RECA must divest of education by November 30th, 2022, and RECA's moved that up by 6 months to June 1st. The license choice has been RECA's focus, licensee choice. And the Residential Industry Council has officially recognized now 7 course providers, including real estate education specialists, associations, colleges, and universities. And as of right now, one of the providers will have the fundamentals course available for June 1st. And I think that is, what's the acronym? RELO is the name, yeah.
Yeah.
So
sorry,
RELO will have the course available on June 1st. And others will come along shortly. They're still submitting their applications and putting their material together. And so we fully expect that we should have, more than one provider in short time. All the recognized courses will be on RECA's website. And I believe that they are on there right now, currently, are they not?
Currently recognized ones, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Brian. And by the way, Brian Dury to my left is the communications manager at RECA. Sorry, I didn't introduce you earlier. So brokers and managing hires or hiring managers should be aware of the available courses and providers and understand which ones might be best for practitioners joining their brokerage. And then relicensing education, that's something that we were considering on how to handle. We have decided that they will not happen in the 2022-2023 licensing year. But these will be offered by third-party providers. But in the interest of time and efficiency, we've decided to limit it to one course provider. And we're not sure how that'll work at this point, but we'll keep everybody apprised as we determine that. We're also in the midst of our strategic planning process for 2022 up to 2025. So it's a 3-year strategic plan. Pardon me. Although the board is responsible for developing the plan, they lean heavily on industry councils, and we've had a lot of input into that. It's important to note that the industry council and the board listen to a lot of feedback, consultation with stakeholders into late 2021. And what we heard was that consumer protection is paramount, that RECA should continue to focus on regulating, meeting licensing and enforcement standards, and that engagement with stakeholders can be improved. And so hence this session. These ideas and others inform the proposed strategic priorities that are out now for consultation. And we are continuing the consultation process, and we hope that you'll take time to provide your input as well. So the priorities proposed by the board are around three kind of major pillars: regulatory excellence, trust and confidence, and organizational resilience. And it's important to note that regulatory excellence is a comprehensive rules review and licensing framework. These are the domain of the Industry Council. So we are looking forward to the comprehensive rules review. That's something that it's going to be a major project for the next 2 years, and something that we are really looking for input from the industry on. We recognize that a lot of the rules in the meetings that we've had up to, including yesterday's meeting with the brokers, we've determined and discovered that there are a lot of rules that are just antiquated, that don't suit the current business models and the way that we operate. We heard some about trust funds and how we deal with those and such. So that's really great input. We hope you'll continue to feed it back to us. Like if something's not working within the rules, we'll take a look at them. We'll do a deep dive and see if we can modify them and bring them up to date. And not only that, and you'll hear me say this ad nauseum, we want to know what you're seeing upcoming, because we don't do these rules reviews that often. We want to change the rules so that they apply for the business models that are upcoming in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you see something coming down the road, let us know. That we think this is going to be an issue if we start to see more of this in our market. Yeah, we may consider separate broker licensing for each sector. We're also looking at that, the licensing framework, and we'll be, these are the kinds of things that we'll be consulting on in our sessions. Last year, we spent just a bit of a review on what we went through. We spent a large part of our time dealing with the bylaws. We had a backlog of about 2 years almost of work to be done. And so we spent a lot of time getting caught up. We reviewed the bylaws. Of course, education divestment was a massive task, and I have to give a lot of credit to the staff for the work they did. There was a lot of hours put into that, and a lot of consultation that went out to the industry on that. I think we had over 1,700 survey respondents to the. What was the number? But it was a large number of respondents to the education competency survey.
Yeah, exactly. So we had 1,700 in total, over 900 from organizing the state.
Yeah. So that's and we your council distilled all of that, which was a massive task, and came out with the competencies that we've settled on. We also had some disciplinary activity that we worked on, and the Industry Council now holds many of the disciplinary powers formerly held by the executive director. So this is something that we take pretty seriously. And in the last year, we had some Section 53 temporary suspensions that you probably read in the regulator. Advertising, we are going to be reviewing advertising in the rules review, and we've heard you loud and clear that you're not in favor of the changes that were proposed in 2018. We're not going to be talking about font size. So you'll be happy to hear that, but we do have to address them to make them more relevant to things like social media and so on. And we struck an RMS subcommittee. RMS was another issue that was sort of top of mind, and the subcommittee is ongoing right now. Brad Kopp is chairing that, and he has a committee of something like 12 members. Many of them were from the committee that were formed in 2018, or that were sitting on that. So we're taking the ideas that were that were concluded from that committee in 2018, revisiting them, taking the pulse of the industry and trying to update that, the RMS rules. And we also worked on clarifying the rules around disclosure of conditional sales. And as you've seen, we worked with area on that, and that's been I think a favorable outcome, especially in this busy market. We continue to ongoing stakeholder engagement. And again, as I said, the relicensing education, once we've made a decision on what the relicensing education is going to be, we'll get that out to everybody. Also, a mandate from the government has been red tape reduction, and we'll talk about how this is going to be an ongoing focus in the rules review. We'll keep that in mind. And then, of course, working with other industry councils. There are 4 other industry councils, I think that's right. And we have a chairs roundtable that meets on a regular basis so that we can, work in harmony, I guess, with the board. So with all of that, I think we can take it out to questions and start to get some input from you. So Brian, I will defer to Brian because we are coordinating between online and in person in the room.
Thank you, Sano. If anyone in the room has a question, we'll just pass the mic to you so that the people online will be able to hear you as well.
So I'll open the floor for any questions about our activities or input on the strategic plan.
Well, we have online questions. The first one has to do with the education and what happens to people who are in the middle of a RECA course. And then June 1st happens and there's third-party providers.
Maybe I can let Russ answer that one, please.
You bet. So if you are enrolled by the course by June 1st, you have until December 1st to complete the course. So we're not taking new enrollments at that point. So June 1st that happens.
Okay, thanks, Russ.
Just in case you couldn't hear that online, he said if you're enrolled in the course before the June 1st, you have until December 1st to finish that RECA course. Another question we have online is has to do with the licensing framework. And let's say you're a broker who already has the 4 different sectors on your license. Does this mean that if you separate that out and I want to do all those, I'll have to open 4 different brokerages?
No, but Charles, do you want to speak to the topic of the licensing framework? Because this is something that you are expert in and that we're reviewing.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. What I would say is that the industry councils have yet to deliberate what the license structure will look like at this point in time. We need better alignment with the governance structure. And so there are certainly different options, including maintaining the status quo. But ultimately, that conversation, that debate hasn't begun yet. So again, make sure you consult with our either online or with our industry council members and let them know your thoughts and desires.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Charles. Yeah, it's the structure right now. I know it's not. It may not be perfect, and we're reviewing it, but it's not. It's a very complex issue, and we don't have a solution devised yet, but we're working on it. Bill?
Well, Sano, from a broker's point of view, I still believe that there's a necessity for a broker to be able to have licensing capacity in whatever he chooses to do, so that he can hire sales associates that are doing various things. My office has people that are doing rural, commercial. We don't do property management, we do residential, but we're authorized to do all of those. I can't see there being any difference at the end of the day, and that's certainly the way I would vote it passed. The broker has to have the opportunity to have the ability to hire salespeople at all categories. So you wouldn't have to have 4 brokerages. You couldn't have a sales associate that was registered with 4 different brokerages for 4 different capacities to do real estate. That just wouldn't make any sense to me.
Good comments. And again, we're looking for your inputs and ideas on how we can structure that if there is a restructuring that takes place.
And I think also, I mean, practicality and simplicity, you know, we talk about red tape reduction, all those pieces are really important. And so just to give you background where I come from, I do not have any of your experience with respect to the real estate world. I really admire the career you have chosen. Those of you in the room and online who are active in this space, you're involved in the purchase that's the most important purchase for individuals in the residential world of their lives. And so certainly that's a heavy weight to carry. That's a heavy burden to carry. I come from the perspective, I am a lawyer by trade. I don't operate in real estate law. So I often take the perspective of sitting back, having that practical piece, the simplicity piece. I ask the questions that come from the perspective of, well, why do we do this? And does that align with what our law says we're supposed to do? So really, I find that what I aim to do when we start talking about some of these, looking at some of these pieces, looking at potential change, is really sitting back and looking at what makes sense. And what makes sense to someone like me who's coming in as a consumer and with a bit of a fresh eye. So certainly when we talk about seeking feedback, I am a sponge and I am really looking for some of that information, some of that feedback. I'm also involved on the measurement committee. And again, I went in there thinking I knew things. And when I heard some of the different perspectives, I realized how complicated some of these very simple things actually are, and why there are these multiple perspectives and multiple opinions. So that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Erica. And I need to apologize because we have online, and I'm sorry, I don't see the Zoom screen here. So we have online Brad Camden, who's also on council, resident council, and Brad Cobb. So I failed to introduce them at the beginning, but they are online, and I apologize because I can't see the Zoom screen here.
We didn't want them to come in person in case they wore orange.
Yeah.
2 of them would. Yeah, both of them would.
Both of them would. Yeah, we'd be outnumbered. So, yeah. Any other questions that we have online?
Yes, several. The next one is about transaction brokerage. When is RECA going to ban it like BC?
Yeah, I don't know that we know that BC has taken that route. We're not contemplating that at this time in council. But we're open to feedback from the industry if they think that if we get feedback that it's there are benefits to it, well, we'll review them. But at this point, we have not. We're not taking any steps in that direction.
Any other questions in the room?
I can just, in order to keep things going here, I can throw in some comments too. I still honestly believe that if transaction brokerage is handled properly, it's the fairest way to do real estate. You've got to disclose everything to everybody. And however, it's got to be handled properly. And we're not all doing it that way. I can tell you from running a brokerage of 85 sales associates. So, but transaction brokerage as such to me isn't foreign. It's the way a lot of commercial real estate is done. It can be very fair and very effective, and it's probably the best way to do real estate if it's done properly.
Okay. Next question has to do with exams. How are they going to work when education divestment happens, and will they be online or in person?
I'll let Russ respond to that, please.
So I'll speak to it in part and then perhaps ask our expert, Barbara Young, to respond to the remainder of that. But the education will be divested from RECA, but the examinations will remain with RECA, which means that you'll take a course from a course provider and then write a RECA exam. As far as the proctoring goes, Barbara, Do you want to comment on the proctoring of those?
Sure. Thank you. The proctoring will be done at test centers, so nothing will change there unless we go into another serious pandemic, which hopefully we won't. And yeah, it's all done at test centers across Alberta.
The people online actually couldn't hear you there, but we'll be continuing with proctored exams as we are now afterwards, barring another, hopefully not another pandemic. Next question has to do with education as well. So if people enroll in fundamentals now before the divestment, can they continue on to a RECA practice course after divestment, or would they have to do through a third-party provider?
So that they need, if they have to be enrolled in the practice of real estate before June 1st in order to be able to complete that before December 1st.
They can go on and do the other courses as long as they're enrolled in.
Thank you for the clarification, Bill. So let's say that you were enrolled in the fundamentals, you finished that before December 1st, and then you want to take the practice or real estate exam, you would have to take that with a third-party provider.
Because after that point, we just simply don't offer them. December 31st.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Hope that clarifies. Good question. Any questions? Anyone in the room?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, grab the microphone so they can hear you online as well.
Yeah, I just wondered what kind of evaluative format RECA would have relative to the course providers. Thank you.
The question was what kind of relative format?
Evaluative
Or
format.
evaluative
Yeah.
format? Okay,
Just how the oversight of it all.
right. Yeah, again, I'll defer to Russ.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A great question. So can they hear me online, right?
Just a little closer to the mic.
All right. How's this? Is this better?
Yep.
So the RECA does not have accrediting authority over course providers. So what we will do is we will report by course provider the exam success results with the average exam score so that people can make their own informed choice.
Does that answer the question? Thank you for the question.
Just going through some of the questions. Some of these questions have to do with condominium managers. So save those for the engagement session with the residential property manager session with the industry council on Friday. There's on Friday at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and that's a good point. If any questions come in that we can't handle, if the volume gets to the point where we can't handle them, we will answer them. We'll answer every question that's brought forth, but we'll post them online. And if they are for another council, we will save them for that council session.
Okay. So the news just went out about RECA hiring a director of stakeholder engagement and communications for the very first time. Can you give a layperson's definition of what the roles and responsibilities of this position, who previously performed these duties, and is this position intended to correct anomalies identified by licensees?
That's another great question. And I'm going to let Russ respond to that because.
Okay, you bet. So walk me through the three parts of that again, if you don't mind.
So what are the roles and responsibilities of the position? Who previously performed these duties? And is the position intended to work on correcting some of the abnormalities in engagement identified by licensees?
Great, thank you. So this role will have a specific responsibility for reaching out to industry stakeholders, industry members, brokerages across the province, and to really outreach and to help in collecting that information as to what really matters in the self-regulated industry. Who did this before? We've always had a responsibility for this before. I'm not sure that we never really had a single director in charge of specific stakeholder engagement, and that is the new aspect for us. This individual our core industry council members, we are going to be using them to outreach to the industry as a whole more often, more frequently, to a greater extent. We recognize in the past that we as an organization have not gone through this outreach. We want to make sure that that's part of our go forward practice to really entrench it as something that we do. I know that I've met a number of you, particularly from the brokerage side, so that's something I've been engaged with over the last 9 months. We've been having regular sessions with industry council members there, with the brokerages right across the province, and I think we've met with probably 30 of the largest 40 at this point in time. We'll continue to do that, but also want to outreach to all licensees. The individual will have responsibility similarly to reach out to the associations that represent the respective sectors. Now, we don't regulate the associations, but they represent the voice of those licensees when they're members of those associations. And that's, of course, more than just within organized real estate. That goes from all of our sectors, whether that be condominium management or commercial real estate or mortgage brokers, whatever the case is. Those associations are going to be a big part of the outreach that this individual will be tasked with.
Great, thank you. Russ.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. Question from Brad?
Thanks. So what's RECA doing to eliminate some of the policy red tape and some of the administrative red tape that's built up over the years within RECA's processes? So outside of the rules, what are you guys doing to ensure that there's smooth processes for licensees and associations? Right now, we're looking at months between answers from RECA to simple questions. So what's the industry council's role in that? What are you doing to ensure that some of these processes are streamlined?
Thanks, Brad. We can assure you that any of the questions that come to council, we respond to on the timeline we meet. We were meeting last year when we first got together. We actually doubled the meeting, so we met every month. This year is half of that. So, to the extent that we can convene a meeting, I can assure you that we will have a response to you. I don't know if you have any more specifics on what other processes.
Well, this, like
certainly
the
address
education divestment has been slow. It's been hard when we ask questions to the staff. It's months between answers, or it's a non-answer. The process for applying and getting approval and the back and forth is very, very difficult. So, red tape isn't just red tape in the rules. It's actually red tape in the processes that RECA set up. So another example is.
I want to make sure that you're being heard. Can you maybe grab a mic so that,
Sorry.
Yeah, just so the Zoom participants can hear you. Thanks.
Yeah, so red tape isn't simply red tape around rules.
Yeah.
It's red tape around the administrative processes that RECA uses. And is there a plan to deal with that at either the board or the council level? You guys have a pretty hefty budget and you've got a lot of staff. But on the enforcement end, there isn't a lot of enforcement happening. So when licensees and when associations deal with RECA, we find it difficult, we find it tough, and we find it very hard to be able to get discernible answers from the staff and frankly, from the council. So you guys have talked about a rules review. It's going to take 2 years. The government took a year to do the entire act. And so now we're talking about another 2 years to look at a rules review, where there's tons of things that you can do in policy and interpretation rather than simply changing the rule. And if you look at these rules, the rules are very similar to other jurisdictions in Canada. It's not the rules usually that are the problem, it's the interpretation of those rules and how those rules are applied in Alberta, which is quite different than in other places. So you can't make a rule for every instance, but you can make some interpretations. And so the question is how are you going to do that by attempting to reduce red tape outside of asking the minister to do anything? Because, you know, that
Okay, so
typically is a long process.
thank you for that. All, you know, good points. So what I'm hearing is that the outside of the rules review, well, first of all, can we shorten the rules review and be more efficient in doing that? I think that was one thing you mentioned. And I can assure you, I think part of the length of the rules review of the 2 years is because we're going out to stakeholders to get feedback. And so, you know, we're not doing this in a vacuum, and it takes time to have these engagement sessions and so on. So I think that's a large part of it. Bill, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, Brad, I understand totally what you're talking about, and but it has been a massive process. I've never been involved in anything in my entire 35 years in this business where I've been involved with organized real estate that has been as complicated and time consuming as what we've gone through the first little while. So we're getting things organized too. And I think we're getting to the point where it's pretty obvious what the difference between the board of directors and the councils is, and your contact is going to be with the councils. And I think you can expect much more immediate answers from the councils now than you've experienced in the past. I think we're getting to the point where we are winning that battle.
Well,
With the rules review, I can only say, Brad, that this doesn't have to be done all in one piece. So we're looking at taking examples from you people, for example, as to things we can change immediately. And they don't have to wait until all however many sections of rules there are to be reviewed before we start to make changes. Changes can be made on a piecemeal basis based on some of the things that you consider to be more important. So I think it's a process. It's been a very complicated process. I think we're making headway.
Well, in all fairness, you know, the process is complicated. If government can do something, if government can change an entire act in a year, do all the consultation, you know, Service Alberta, I mean, they're not known to be super efficient. They've got, you know, 17 different pieces of legislation that they manage. If they can do it, you guys can certainly do it quicker.
Don't forget, we're talking about volunteers. We're
Well,
not talking about civil servants.
No,
That-
I understand that,
Do
but
this job.
I also understand that you're focused on these things, right? So, you know, what's important to us is that the industry council moves at the speed of industry, not the speed of government. And so it's complicated partly because RECA makes it complicated. And I mean, that if government can do this fast, you guys certainly should be able to do some of the things more quickly than you've done. We're 16 months into your council mandate from when you were sat, and we haven't seen a lot of changes, even minor ones. So just some feedback for you, and don't have to agree with me, but that's, you know, we're 16 months in, guys.
No, I would
We're
just,
talking about
I would
another
just
2
like you to
years.
remember though that we are all volunteers. We're not full-time people, and we don't have 24 hours a day to dedicate to RECA. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It has
No,
been a
that's fair.
gargantuous task, and maybe Erica, you can speak to it, but the
Yeah, I
time
mean-
commitment's been huge.
And I think perhaps another piece of it, if you look at what was done by the government, I mean, absolutely, in very short order, they created some borders. And then it was passed along for us to do additional work. It's not like everything was in a nice, neat package. There was still work that had to be done in terms of aligning other pieces that had been written that no longer aligned with the act, right? There was a lot of pieces that had to get caught up. So it might be unfair to talk about the length of time they took to change a whole act when afterwards there was some housekeeping and some additional work that still fell on our shoulders before we could even look at some of those other pieces. And I agree, we are volunteers, but and also the other piece is that we have to be careful about what our mandate is versus what is, administration, what are the different pieces. So if something comes across our desk that we might be really passionate about, but something's taking too long or there's an issue, our first step is to go back and look at, does this fall within our purview? Is this something we should be doing? Or does it actually belong with either a different council? Does it belong actually back with RECA staff? And so part of that is just right now us making sure that we're fitting within our mandate, and where we discover there's holes, then we've got to sort of fill those holes, plug those holes, and make sure we are solid in that governance structure. And so it's taking a little bit, once we're solid in our structure, we're going to be able to move a lot quicker in terms of addressing the day-to-day concerns that we bring up. Because absolutely, I think you're 100% correct when we say, red tape reduction isn't just about the written word, it's about how it plays out in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and we are looking for opportunities for red tape reduction throughout the process. So we welcome your feedback, and I know that anything that we've been asked, of by area, I know that personally I've responded to immediately. I don't know of an example where we haven't, but I've.
Well, we won't get into that today, but this isn't, when you talk about red tape, maybe the question's better put to Russ, which is, what are you guys doing to change some of these processes that cause licensees and associations pain? When we email RECA, we hear it's 3 weeks to get an answer to an email. You're not short on budget, you're not short on staff.
I think, it's a fair question if that's occurring. Russ, maybe you can speak to it. And if you have specific examples, then I think we can certainly address them and work to improving it. And
We don't need to get into examples here. I just want to understand.
No, not here today, but if you provide them to us, I can assure you that we will address them and work to fix the problem. But Russ, maybe you can comment on administration's work in reducing red tape and the effort that you're putting in programs that you're putting behind that.
You bet. So that there's obviously many facets with respect to red tape, and with responses to things about education matters, which I think is largely what I think areas is about speaking to here. We go through a process to review the materials to ensure that they cover off each of the content items that's required by competencies, and I understand that there's hopes that goes on very quickly, but when you're going through the content the size of what you are, of course, it takes some time. Sorry, I guess I'm not able to be heard online very well. So we are sort of working to make sure that the responses are effective and quick, but also that they're accurate. And so we'll take the time that's necessary to make sure that happens. I do want to highlight too that the vast majority of what we do as an organization has to do with other aspects, whether that be from licensing, whether it has to do with enforcement, from our compliance advisors. They have a real interaction with industry on a very regular basis, and those are, for us, the primary focus is to make sure that the turnarounds for the licensees, the needs that they have are handled, and if the issues that we can make solutions with.
Thanks, Russ. Appreciate that. If we have a few more questions backing up online. So if we can.
And if I can add something to what Russ said as well.
Yes, please.
Sure, thanks. So really, we're talking about different kinds of processes, and maybe I think something like an area letter, an official area letter coming to our council, to the board, to us, might take a little longer, but things like, I just want people to know who are listening. If you send an email or call us, we get back to you the same day, and that's our goal. And particularly in my area, information services, I can't speak to licensing or education, but they do their best. They have a ton of applications joining the industry, and it's a ton of work to get through it all, and they do their best to get through it. But I know in my area, if you email us, we get back to you the same day.
So when we get an automated response that says your response will be in 21 days.
That may be till licensing backup. I don't think it says that anymore, does it? No, okay.
I still haven't got an answer, and it's been months. So that's fine, but like, this isn't just, what I'm saying is there's lots of red tape, and this council and the board need to look at making sure that this red tape is dealt with, and it's not just a regulatory red tape, it's administrative red tape. And
So for those that
there's
can't,
a ton of processes that you guys go through that nobody knows why you do them.
so for those that can't, I'll just summarize your comments. And Brad just from area is just saying that we have still a lot of work to do in reducing red tape, and it's not just in the rules, but in all the processes. And I can assure you, to the extent that council has an impact on that we'll work to that. And Russ, I think, has a commitment to doing that as well. So thank you for your comments on that.
Moving back to online questions. Next one has to do with buyer brokerage agreements. Someone's saying Ontario courts are currently reviewing buyer brokerage agreements and whether sellers should be paying the buyer agent portion. Is RICA looking at this?
Yeah, there was a recent article in the was it the Globe and Mail or National Post? I'm not sure, but yeah, and so it's on our next agenda, and we'll be reviewing that. I can tell you at a cursory level, there was some misinformation in that article. It's not totally accurate. It even refers to a previous CBC article that was completely debunked. So, it's not everything that is all purported to be. I can tell you that, and I'd like to boast about this, that in Alberta, we do a pretty darn good job representing the industry and protecting the public. And of the, was it 1,200 some complaints that we received, there were 200 fines. And Russ, maybe you can just comment on that, the performance of the industry, which has been something that we can be proud of.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in our last fiscal year, ends in September 30th, we had received 1,229 complaints, and we closed 1,238 files. Now, the reason those numbers are different is because it goes over the year end, so some files will continue. So they're generally roughly similar. We closed 1,238 files. Of that, 208 received sanctions. Those sanctions are letters of reprimand, administrative penalties, and referrals to hearings. So of those 208, about half were administrative penalties. So there's, based on the number of transactions we see, remember those penalties or sanctions are not just with respect to real estate, but they're for all sectors. So for mortgages or for commercial real estate or having. So of those, if you took just those 208, like I said, that's not all for organized real estate. But let's say you took those 208 and you compared that to the roughly 80,000 transactions in the last fiscal year. You can see that the vast majority of transactions are carried forward without anything that's sanctionable. That's, I think, a good credit to the industry members. We have a very solid industry rate across the province, and that there are some interactions, whether that be by error or by intention, that if they go sideways, but most of the vast majority.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. So, I mean, I think we deserve a pat in the back for overall doing a pretty good job. Brian?
Another question about transaction brokerage. Earlier, it was mentioned that that there's a lot of people not doing it properly out there in the industry. How can that be enforced? What can RICA do to better regulate that?
It's a good question. I'm not sure we have the answer, but Bill, maybe you can speak to it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, RICA itself only works on a complaint basis. So it's always after the fact. You can put out information bulletins like RICA does about how it's to be accomplished. But really, it's a brokerage issue. And the training you get at your brokerage and the supervision that a broker has over his files. But even the broker's situation is always after the fact. We're not out there when they're transacting and writing up offers and whatnot. We see it afterwards. So it's a very difficult situation because no matter whether it's RICA or the broker, it's after the fact. So we're dealing with it. So I don't know that there's a really good answer to that, Brian, other than training, information bulletins, and particularly broker training in the brokerage.
Next question has to do with the disclosure of conditional offers that you talked about a while ago, Sano. RICA is supposed to be the guardian of consumers. How do they justify the disclosure on a conditional offer when it may not be in the best interest of the seller?
Try to understand that. How do we justify?
I'll read the question. How is it that RICA, as the guardian of the consumer, can justify the disclosure of a conditional offer when it may not be in the best interest of the seller? It may serve the buyer and the industry in general, but it can be a detriment to the seller.
Well, if I understand the question correctly, I think we're here to protect the public, and the public is 50% sellers and 50% buyers. If you look at it from that perspective, so buyers have rights in the marketplace, and we are looking to protect the rights of the buyers as well. Sellers do have options not to disclose still, but we've recognized that the real estate industry has the right to enforce rules to protect the integrity of their data, and we simply said we allow the industry to do that. We're not going to get in the way of that. It's worked well for the industry for as long as they've had the MLS, and there was no reason to really. We recognize the error in our ways, so appreciate there's different perspectives on it, but I think that the solution we've come up with, especially in this very busy market, is the best solution. Maybe there's more work to be done on it. I think there was some discussion about the U status that, and I'll just my personal bent, I think, would be a step further in making the system run or lubricating the system. But aside from that, I think we have it's a lot better now. I hope that answers the question, if I understood it correctly.
So back to transaction brokerage, but not a question about it, but more so, how does industry get things like transaction brokerage and the idea of banning it? How does that get to the industry council for discussion? How do they get it on RICA's radar?
Well, I think a case has to be made, and we would debate it at council. And again, the case has to support protection of the consumer. So what's the benefit of it to the public of banning it? That's what we need to know. And if we see the merit in it, then we debate that at council and deliberate it.
I think the short answer to that question might be, now you've brought it to our attention, so it looks like it might end up going to our agenda, at least for discussion.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if area has a position on that, but we're always open to that. And we've reached out to area. We work together, and we'll continue to work together to find the industry's position. So if you can aggregate the industry's position, if you know that there's you're hearing things from members, then of course we want to hear from you, and
Our position right now is we haven't heard a lot about it. I think it's very similar to yours, which is, there has to be a reason not to do this. So people behaving badly is not a reason to change regulation. You can't mandate, you can't make a rule for people that are gonna do bad things anyways. And so, we appreciate the council's position on pending sales. But to be clear, that's not a regulatory thing that RECA takes care of. So, the transaction brokerage, I believe it's authorized in the act. Those types of things are a much longer discussion than just a cursory discussion. So, we appreciate, if council continues to stay within their mandate and not go outside of it, by really looking at the act and saying, you know what, this is all we do. I think, things are going to improve. And once you get to that point, and you're clearly not there yet, but once you get to that point, I think things are going to be a lot better.
Thank you, Brett. See, there's a lot of things that we do agree on.
And I think you're right. That's how a lot of our discussions start, is by looking back, look at the legislation. What is our role in this? Sometimes it's just discussion for understanding, and sometimes it's, a question of, oh, this actually might be an issue that we need to put on our agenda as an actual action item, as opposed to just the background understanding of what's going on in the industry.
Thanks, sir.
The next question, it has to do with condominium documents, but it does pertain to the residential sector as well, as a lot of you do deal with, buyers and sellers of condominiums and have to deal with condo documents. Is there a plan to standardize condo documents, and how would you work with the other industry councils to get that forward, perhaps to service Alberta?
Well, it falls outside of our banding, but I just want to say that there are items that fall outside of our mandate, and we can take them to Service Alberta. Pardon me. We know a guy who happens to chair RECA right now, and so we can get we can get messages to them, and there's a willingness there to interact between ministries, for the benefit of the public. So I know that we're talking about measurement standards with municipal affairs, and and other issues that cross jurisdictions. And I've recognized in my time here that some of the bigger issues that we have in real estate are really outside of our mandate and outside of our ministry. And so it takes us coloring outside the line sometimes to try and come up with some innovative solutions, and we don't mind doing that. In fact, I kind of enjoy doing that. So we're working on that. We're not just kind of focused, on just what we can is in our mandate. We do actually reach out to try and help the industry. So I hope I answered that question with respect to condos, but we can forward that to the appropriate council. Absolutely. Put that on their table.
Just going through some more questions here. Is there anyone in the room?
Yeah, if we can have any comments from the room, please.
Yeah.
Get you.
Oh, okay. This might not be in the scope either, but it says item that I hear popping up. It's the Calgary's had a fairly hot market. You get listings coming on at a price, say, submit by X, offer to do on Y, and you get a lot of blind bidding, and you're hearing dissatisfaction from buyers about this. You're not really going for the cards lay, and perhaps overbidding and retrospectively find they've been way too high. I think there's an article out of one of the real estate magazines in Ontario about buyers becoming unhappy with this and maybe wanting a more transparent process of what these bids are, kind of like an auction process. But anyway, that's sort of something that's come up and on the,
Mhm.
you know, the conversations in real estate. So I just put it up for comments. But I haven't thought of that. Thank you.
Yeah, so the question was with respect to blind bidding and, you know, has it come up as an issue? And I can say that we have discussed it. In fact, the CREA has come out with their open bidding option, and we're just evaluating that. We don't know that much about it, but I believe it's come out as a, you know, as a potential solution or an option to deal with blind bidding. I'm not sure that it, you know, we don't have that much information. I'm not sure there's going to be a benefit to it. It may, if you talk to Bill, he thinks it's going to work in reverse. I think I won't speak for you, but maybe you can, in your role, you may have heard a bit more, Bill, from
Well-
CREA on that.
Not so much from Korea, but it's intended, I think, to try to control prices somewhat in the markets that are overheated like Toronto and Vancouver. But again, you've got the same situation. You've got a buyer who wants to know what all these bids are, but you've got a seller who would like to see the price go as high as possible. So who is our client at the end of the day? Again, and I don't know how we handle that. I personally can't see the disclosure of multiple offer prices as being a solution to much of anything. But the Canadian Real Estate Association thinks differently. I'm not sure what area's position is on it, but I struggle with the concept.
So, I think it's really the federal government that thinks differently. And this is absolutely a political solution. In Alberta, it's already authorized under the Real Estate Act. So you can sell your house by auction if you wish. It's not really a regulatory matter for the council. We had a consultation with government, and this is really the federal government trying to push their solution on all the provinces. The fact that you can do both in Alberta makes sense, and so consumers have a choice. And if you want to sell your house by auction, you can. So, you know, doesn't really have much to do with regulatory items anyways.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we'll agree on that too.
Just a point of clarity, the Real Estate Act and its rules primarily regulate the relationship between the client, the consumer, and the industry member or the licensee. Relationships between buyer and seller are outside of RECA's mandate. And although I recognize there are some consumer protection overlaps, generally speaking, when it comes to that relationship between buyer and seller, their negotiation between each other and gaining advice from their real estate professional, that's outside of what RECA can really regulate. So just a point of clarity for those people who are
Yeah, I'm
online.
listening in. Good point of clarity. Thank you. Yeah, I think if I can just add to it, I think that the rationale for CREA bringing that forward was to simply keep, if the consumer wanted to opt for an auction solution, that they're keeping it within the industry. And because right now auctions are not necessarily within organized real estate. So that's my understanding of it, but I know little of it, and we are investigating it.
Great. Another question has to do with the divestment of education. Will that change the labor mobility requirements at all with people coming to Alberta from other jurisdictions?
I think I can say no, but Russ, I'll let you expound on that. No and no. So no, it does not change. One of the things that we did change though, and Russ, perhaps you can speak to this, is that we did make a change to the cost of transferring your license in the province, from province to province.
We are proposing to change that, yes. So there's, right now, due to what labor mobility requires, of course, is that we accept other provinces licensing, that they are able to cover our province and license in our province without any additional barriers to that. The curious thing is that our fees currently that to come in from outside of the province is a fee of $100 to to license in Alberta. If you are from Alberta, you have to pay $475. So they're proposing that there be more of a harmonization of that, so that the equal treatment coming from outside the province is the same as we should inside.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a good solution too. It shouldn't cost you more to get licensed from within the province than coming from outside the province. So we'll just take a couple more questions. We're running up on the hour. And so if there's any burning questions from the room, we'll take them. Otherwise, we'll take maybe one or two more from the online. And I will assure you that for our other questions that you submit online, we will answer them and we'll post the answer to them. So thank you for your participation.
Well, that's your email. Oh, great, so we could, maybe that's the, you're very quick, Bill.
This next question has to do with new education providers again, and how disciplinary recommendations that involve course upgrading, how will that work? Because sometimes when a hearing panel might give a suspension or a fine, and as well as an education component, how will that education component work with third-party providers?
That's a real good question.
Yeah.
As to, I think Russ could speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you. So on that question, I think that I referred to, nope, I'll refer to Charles. You should just- So I will offer though that pre-licensing education and education required by hearing panels are not the same education. Having said that, we are going to be, we will no longer be providing that, and I'm sure hearing panels will have a latitude to select courses as appropriate. Did you want to add to that, Charles?
I can, thanks, Mr. Chair. As we've tried to compress about 5 years of work into 18 months to 2 years, based on the legislative requirements, this is one of those elements that, again, a great question, and we have yet to ask the industry councils to wrap their minds around it. So more news at 11.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks for the question. That's a good one. So we're gonna have one more question, and then we'll wrap up the session.
Last question I have here is really about the rules review, and you had mentioned that certain things will be looked at more quickly than others. Is the rules governing the receipt and accounting of trust deposits and real estate transactions one of the things that will be taken care of or looked at initially?
I can say that we've heard that, Russ, I will let you chime in on this. I can say that we've heard that from brokers, and they did, from my perspective, it's one of the low-hanging fruit that we could attack. But
yeah, so I think I'm going to read a bit into that question. This is respecting what you do with commissions that come from a lawyer and whether they can be put into the trust account. And there are some complexities here. The trust account is specifically a statutory account. That the statutory account is specific to monies coming from consumers, and commissions fall outside of that. So can be looked at possibly, but it still needs to be within that backdrop of the legislation. And that is one thing as a regulator. So is that our first requirement to us is consumer protection. And so if that sometimes has an impact on ability for using a trust account for business purposes, we default to consumer protection. That doesn't mean there can't be another option available, another way to approach that. Maybe there's a specific trust accounts that can set up separately by brokerages to receive that money. There are options for that, but from our perspective, respecting trust accounts, it's for consumer money. It's mandated in the legislation, it's statutory, and that's I can't see that changing that much.
okay. Well, I think that was our last question. So thank you, Russ, for the response on that. I want to thank everybody who participated online and everyone in the room. Thank you very much for attending. I'd like to get your feedback on, the format. How did this work? How can we make it better? Can we improve on it? I know we could have had maybe a fireplace in the background here and some, I don't know, but we welcome all of your feedback, and you can please reach out to us. Our emails is posted online, I guess, at Rika, and you can reach me anywhere, Google me or Bill or Erica, I'm sure. Or the two Brads. Thank you, Brad and Brad online, Brad Hamden and Brad Kopp, who are also on council and have been attending online. So any closing comments from the table?
I'd just say that this is an indication, I think, that Rika, like never before, is looking for input from people in the industry. And we're absolutely open to do that. We're going to do that more often. And that I don't think it's been done in the past. So by all means, feel free to contact us. We need help and we take direction. So contact us anytime you want.
Thanks, Bill. Erica, do you want to?
I just wanted to say that it was really nice to, get to meet my fellow council members in person, but also to see some of you come out. I swear some faces look familiar to me, so I don't know if I've seen you on billboards or what, but I do see some familiar looking faces. And when Sandal says, feel free to reach out and, mention things that go on our agenda, we really do in our meetings, not only try to hit upon the pieces that we know we are mandated to do or that we need to take action on, and especially things with deadlines, but we also do spend a little bit of time in each meeting looking at particular articles or issues and trying to understand that what's coming in the industry or what are some things brewing out there. And so by all means, if you come across an article, you come across an issue, you think of something, if we can be more forward thinking instead of reactive, we are all for it. So please reach out.
I'll second that. Russ?
Just want to thank everyone in this room, everyone online for being here. We so much appreciate the insights that we receive from industry. We as a regulator are I mentioned earlier, consumer protection is our first mandate. However, with that also comes making sure that we're not creating any impediments to you doing business that don't involve consumer protection. That's something that we want to focus on. So appreciate you coming here and offering your feedback. So thank you.
Okay, well, with all that, thanks again. We'll look forward to the next engagement session, and we'll see you out there in the trenches. Bye for now.